So what? Winning with impacts. Winning with impacts. This guy. Alright? Every debate that you're in is going to be full of lots of arguments, right? We know all these things. You're going to have an argument in every debate round. Lots of arguments in every debate round. Some of those arguments are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. At the end of a debate round, you are not trying to tell the judge, here's what arguments are bad and why they're bad, right? You need to tell the judge why your arguments are good and help the judge figure out how to help you win. And this isn't just in a debate round, right? This is how we have discussions. If somebody brings up a point about your favorite rock star, if they bring up a point about your favorite basketball star, if they bring up a point about some book that they think is better than another book, you aren't going to point out all the minimal things that don't matter, right? You're not going to say, well, I really like the fact that this book is on this kind of paper, right? That's just not a relevant part of the conversation. And so when you're in a debate round, one of the most valuable questions you can ask is, so what? Always asking, why does this matter to me? Why does this matter to the judge or my audience, whoever's listening to me? And why does this matter when we talk about a specific resolution? So, right now, what's the resolution? We're talking about, is it better to have private space exploration or publicly funded space exploration, right? That's what we're talking about. Well, if that's the topic that we're thinking about, and somebody talks about why government does a really good job of investing in education, is that relevant to conversation? Slightly, but so tangentially that we aren't going to worry about those arguments. And so you want to be trying to figure out how to identify the good and the bad arguments. Good debaters make good arguments. Good debaters are making good arguments. You do not want to be the person making the argument about the color of space shuttles, right? That's just not going to matter in the public-private debate. What you want to talk about is the government more efficient at creating this technology, or is it safer to have the government be involved in this process? Maybe because the government has the technology, the government has all these international connections that they can talk to other governments. So good debaters are making good arguments, and we know the three parts of an argument, right? They're the claim, the warrant, and the impact, or the assertion, evidence, and commentary. You can use either way. I know here at Sci, you guys are using assertion, evidence, and commentary. But typically in debate, people are going to say you make a claim, you have a warrant, and you have an impact. Claim, warrant, and impact. Ricky, what is a claim?
Claim is the assertion what you're saying is right.
So if I stand up and I say, I think that blue is better than purple, what's my assertion? Blue is better than purple, exactly. And then here, what is a warrant? What's evidence? What am I trying to do with my evidence stage?
You're trying to back up your assertion or your claim. You're trying to prove why it's true.
So I'm saying blue is better than purple. Have I put any evidence in there yet?
No.
But what if I say blue is better than purple because blue is a primary color? Have I now put a warrant in there?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Algernon, what's my warrant if I say blue is better than purple because blue is a primary color? What's the warrant?
Because blue is a primary color.
There we go, exactly. Blue is a primary color. So that's my warrant. That's my evidence. I'm trying to give you some reason that this claim is true. All right. But the argument is not complete at that stage. And this is probably the place most debaters get the most hung up. Debaters will often say blue is better than purple. And debaters will very frequently say, because blue is the primary color. But they will stop at that point. What's the first question we have to ask at the very top of the page, Algernon? What is it? So what? Blue is better than purple because blue is a primary color. So what?
What does it matter?
What does it matter that it's a primary color? And so I need to then give you explanation. I need commentary. I need to give you the impact. When I say blue is better than purple because blue is a primary color, and primary colors can be used to make every color in the rainbow, I have now made the impact. So now you know why blue is better than purple. I go through the claim, the warrant, the impact. I go through an assertion, I put evidence with it, and I give you commentary. I tell you why that matters to you, why does that matter to me, why does that matter in this debate round. Great debaters. So what do good debaters do? They make good arguments. Great debaters identify which arguments are important, and they win those arguments. Good debaters identify which arguments are important, and they win those arguments. So, if we're having this conversation where I said blue is better than purple, but what if we're talking about the space exploration topic? Does that matter, Algernon?
Nope.
Not at all, right? Why doesn't it matter, Kia?
Wait, you're asking about like space and.
We're talking about space. Should the federal government or private companies run space exploration in the United States?
No, it's not relevant because it's talking about colors and the content. I mean, the claim is about space.
Exactly. So if the resolution is talking about space, and we start talking about which college is better, we're just not talking about the right thing. So even if you're making a good argument that has all three pieces together, that it has to be about the topic. Exactly, because the resolution is the focus of our debate round. And so great debaters are those who identify which arguments are important and win those arguments. So that's the things that you need to make sure that you're doing. Now that we know what great debaters do, we need to figure out, first of all, how do we identify good arguments? How do we identify which arguments are important? Right? We don't just want to make an argument with three pieces, we need to identify which arguments are important. The first thing you need to say is, does this argument answer the resolution? The resolution, the topic. If you are assigned to write a paper about Mark Twain, and you start talking about all these really interesting things that happened in the 1400s, what does that matter?
It doesn't.
If I tell you a great story about how Christopher Columbus went to the king and queen and he convinced Queen Isabella to put up the crown jewels to get him to sail his ship, but your paper's supposed to be about Mark Twain, and I make a great argument about why Queen Isabella made a bad decision, what's the reader going to ask?
Where's Mark Twain?
Where's Mark Twain? So what? Why do I care about this? And so the first thing you want to answer is, does this argument talk about the resolution? Are we discussing the resolution here? And the second way you identify whether an argument is important is you ask, does this argument hurt my side? Does this argument hurt my side? If we're thinking about the space exploration topic that we're on right now, and someone gets up and makes a really interesting argument about why the government does a really good job of protecting safety in outer space, but your case only talks about trying to provide as much money as possible to exploring space and talks nothing about safety, does it matter? No. They're talking about something that doesn't hurt my side, right? My argument is premised completely on, I realize there are going to be more safety risks if every person out there is able to go out and explore space on their own. But that's going to mean so much more money going into it that we're going to end up with more people exploring space. And so you need to ask yourself, is my side harmed by just conceding that kind of argument? And maybe that's the kind of argument you just let sit out there. If they want to spend time talking about which way is safer, but the whole debate is about how do we get more people into outer space, safety might not be the question that we're asking. That doesn't mean it's always irrelevant, because a lot of times that's going to be a relevant question. But you need to ask, does this argument hurt or help my side? And the third thing you need to do is see if the judge is going to agree with this point, can they still vote for me? So if the judge agrees with this point, can they vote for me? Let's talk about the space exploration topic again. If the judge agrees that me allowing only the government to invest in space exploration is going to hurt people who decide they want to study science, technology, engineering, and math, right? Those are the STEM subjects. Everyone talks about how important it is to learn science and math, right? This is Sci Academy. If their argument is the government being the only person exploring space is going to reduce the number of people with those types of training because there's just not going to be as much money in it, so fewer people are going to be willing to go into those fields. Is that going to be impactful to the judge? If your judge is sitting there and your judge is a teacher, which your judge in debate rounds is probably going to be a teacher, and you tell the judge that the con team is arguing something that is going to reduce the number of people and the motivation of students to study science and math. Do you think that matters to your judge? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that matters to your judge. Even if your case doesn't specifically talk about science and technology, does it matter to your judge? Yeah. So you have to answer all three of these questions together. Because if something, if something doesn't talk about the resolution, doesn't hurt your side, but it is still going to make the judge vote, you better better be sure you're addressing it. And the same with all of these. If somebody is addressing the resolution, it doesn't hurt your side, but the judge is going to care about it, then you need to address it. Question?
Seems like the judges are gonna be a little bit biased in sometimes in the situation.
Absolutely. Who is it? Do you know anybody who's not a little bit biased? No, exactly. So everybody's got some biases. So what you're trying to do as a debater is think about the audience I'm going and talking to has biases. How do I get them to jump on board with my argument, even though they may be biased for it or against it? I mean, Kia wants to be a politician, right? You think Kia's constituents aren't going to be biased? They're all going to be biased. Kia's not looking for a way to find the unbiased constituency to vote for her, because if she does, she will never be a politician. She'll be somebody who runs for office a lot, but she'll never win. Because if all you want is people who are unbiased to vote for you, you're going to find maybe 2 or 3 people. Probably don't think about anything. Everybody's biased about something, right? I mean, who's your football team? Not into sports. Who's your top musician?
Kanye West.
There you go. So Kanye. So if I come in and the first thing I said today was I think Kanye West is the worst musician in the world.
I would agree.
Well, so see, but look at this. So see, that's your bias, and that's her bias. So I would be getting Kia mad. She'd be ready to leave. And at the same time, Algernon would be really happy. He'd be like, perfect, this is somebody who agrees with me. But I didn't please, but what have I done? I've just lost one voter. So if I was in Kia's shoes trying to be a politician, I'm in worse shape, right? Because now, before I had both of you maybe somewhat willing to listen and talk to me, and now I'm down to just one. So the bias is getting your judge to agree with your points and seeing whether or not a judge is going to agree with a particular point and still be able to vote for me is an important question to ask yourself. Flip the page over. So now we know how to identify which arguments are important. Does it talk about the resolution? Can I win if I can see this argument? Does the judge care about this issue? The next thing we need to do is talk about how do you win the important arguments. 3 things you need to do to win arguments. First thing is roadmap. The second thing is use 3-point refutation. And the third and final thing is to always impact. Let's talk about it. Roadmap. Where did we come from? Where are we now? And where are we going? Signposting, exactly, same thing. So, signposting, roadmap, telling everyone in the room, where are we in the world right now? My opponent is talking about this, I'm telling you this, here's why I win. My partner said this, my opponent said this. Now we're arguing this, right? Helping the judge. We talked about flowing earlier today, right? So my team said this is our first argument. The opponent said this next to it. And then our response is this third spot. Flowing is a really easy way for us to help think about where are we in the round. Helping the judge to kind of see, here's the path we're on, so that everybody ends up at the place you as a debater want them to end up. And that's a big key as a debater, is trying to figure out where you want them to go. Question?
So like, point out why their arguments are bad and why yours are so much better than theirs.
Exactly. That's what you're trying to do. So the roadmap is a way to tell everybody where we are. You're also helping the judge know where to flow these things on his or her flow sheet. Because not only are you as a debater flowing, but your judge is going to sit there and flow too.
Like you're being the teacher of the
What?
teacher.
That's right. Exactly. You're teaching the teacher who's sitting back there judging your debate round. And so you have to think about, how do I make this clear so that they are writing down the things I want them to write down? Not just kind of whatever ideas they decide to write down, but the things you have thought about with your partner that you want them to be writing down. So that's the first thing. You need a roadmap. The second thing you need to do is 3-point refutation. And this is what we're going to spend our drill time working on today. 3-point refutation. This is key to being a top debater. Good debaters drop arguments. They don't talk about everything they're supposed to talk about. Great debaters use 3-point refutation. 3-point refutation is, first thing, they said. What are they talking about? What are we talking about? They said. What are we talking about? They said that purple is the best color because it can be used to match with 40% of colors in the world. That's the argument we're talking about. What are we talking about? The second thing is, what do I say? What's my response? So what are we talking about? They said that purple's the best color. My response is, no, blue's a better color because as primary color, it can be used to make almost every color in the rainbow. And finally, impact. Why does my response matter? And why do I win? They said purple is the best color because it can match with 40% of colors in the world. I say blue is a better color because as a primary color, it can be used to make almost every color in the rainbow. And this matters because matching with other colors is not the key to being a great color, but being able to make other things out of yourself is more important. That's why it matters, that's why I win. Now hopefully you aren't debating colors all the time, right? But let's say that they say, what are they talking about? They say that private space exploration is dangerous. That's their argument. 10 people every year are going to die in outer space if we have private space exploration. My response is that the danger doesn't reduce just by having the federal government be in charge of it. And I point to 1, 2, 3, 4 examples of times the government has sent people up into space and tragedies have happened. Government being involved or private sector being involved doesn't exclude tragedy from happening. My response goes further and says, in reality, even though there will be 10 people who die every year, that's because we're going to have 5 million every year going into outer space. Here's my piece of evidence, right? And this is going to be a full argument. This isn't just going to be, no, moving on. This is going to be, they said 10 people are going to die. I say it's risky no matter whether the government or private people do it. And the 10 people who die are going to be 10 out of the millions who go rather than out of this small pool of people. Here's my evidence that says that's true. Why does that matter? Having more people go into space increases people's desire to study science and math. It makes a stronger nation, and it encourages us to be an advanced country and to go out and to explore things. That's why I win. Right? So I go through those 3 steps. What are we talking about? They said, what's my response? I say, an impact. Why does this matter to the judge, to me, to the debate round, and why do I win? So that's the most important thing we're going to learn today, is the 3-point refutation. So finally, let's talk about the last thing you want to do, and that's to always impact. So that's this, why does it matter and why do I win, right? In 3-point refutation, you're impacting. You're telling the judge, you're telling the audience, you're telling anyone who's listening to you. When you're writing a paper, your concluding sentence needs to be an impact statement. You're giving analysis and commentary, and you're helping everyone to understand why your arguments ought to win. Always impact. How did you win this particular point? How did you win this point? This point is that red is better than green because red's the primary color, right? Whatever. I win this point for this reason. Second, what role does this point play in the resolution? In the resolution, right? We have to be on topic. If we're not talking about the resolution, then it doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant. Third, why your winning points matter. Let's say your opponent concedes that blue is a better color. But again, we're in the space exploration topic. Doesn't matter. So great debaters make winning points that affect the resolution, that are talking about why you win that specific point. And finally, impact statements tell the judge why they should vote for you. Let me ask you a question. If I give you an option to vote for your friend or vote against your friend's opponent, which would you take?
Isn't that the same thing?
It is the same thing. But you probably are going to vote for, because we like to be for something. We don't like to be against something. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we feel better if we're for something. Do you know one of the biggest political word fights there is out there? It's whether or not you are pro-life or pro-choice.
What does that mean?
Right? So the people who are pro-life would by the opponents would be called anti-abortion. The people who are pro-choice would be called anti-life, right? The words have huge meanings. I would like to vote for this person. You hear very infrequently someone say, vote against my opponent, right? Even in political ads right now, the campaign season's kind of dirt. There's some dirty campaign ads on TV right now.
One with the ghost stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's some weird stuff going on. But at the end of the ad, are they saying, vote against him?
No, they saying vote for
At the end, they say, that person's bad, so vote for me. Even when they're saying really mean things about their opponent, they're still at the end of the day saying, vote for me, because we like to be for something instead of against something. And so, thinking about how to make your judge feel like they want to vote for you. So, let's remember, the good debaters are making good arguments, but the great debaters are identifying what arguments are important and winning those arguments and telling the judge why they win. Why does this mean you, judge, are going to vote for me? And this is the important thing we're going to talk about.